So, talking about the qualities of a yogi, okay, and what a yogi looks like as far as the attitudes and the behaviors, right? So, first off, you got several different types. Well, let's see, maybe two different main types of yogis. Okay, you have a householder yogi, and you have a yogi who is a person who, you know, is a recluse, I guess you could say, or they live out in the wilderness or off the land or something like that, away from people, and they just sit and meditate in caves and all that kind of stuff. The the ones who, leave society, so to speak. And even those sometimes, well, traditionally the yogi would live on the outskirts of a village, right? Maybe in a little small hut in the woods, or maybe up in the mountains in a cave. And but he would live kind of close to, in proximity of a village, right? So yeah, on the outskirts of the village. And so what would happen whenever the people in the village needed something, as far as something spiritual, you know what I mean? Some type of spiritual guidance or advice, or maybe they need something to help their crops grow, whatever. They would go see him, and they would pay him a dakshina, or guru dakshina, and they would give him food and make sure he was taken care of. Everybody in the village made sure that the yogi was taken care of. And so that is one type of that's where the one of the ancient functions of a yogi. That was one of the older ways that they function, or the way they functioned back in the older times, right? In ancient times. So now you've got the householder yogi. Okay, and the householder yogi is what I am. I'm a householder yogi. There's people out there who live a yogic lifestyle, okay, and still live in the world. So you live a yogic lifestyle. Hello, welcome, welcome. Talking about living a yogic lifestyle. So you live a yogic lifestyle, but you still are in the world. You're still dealing with society, right? You can practice and be in the world, but not of the world, right? If that makes any sense. So when you're practicing, welcome everyone, welcome. So when you're practicing, you are tapping into that yogi who lives in the Himalayas. Now so we're talking about what it takes to be a yogi, what a yogi looks like. And in this modern time, okay, you can't run off into the Himalayan mountains and go meditate, right? Because that's just not going to work. You can do that, but you're not going to get the full benefit. We live in a certain time in a certain area, so you want to take advantage of that, right? You want to take advantage of that. Um, person, I've been doing. Hmm, help me to start a yogic lifestyle. Well, this is kind of, yeah, I definitely, for sure. Um, could you help me start with a yogic lifestyle? And this is what kind of this talk is about, because okay, we're talking about being a householder yogi. We're talking about being a person who practices yoga but still lives in the world. This person, what does it look like? This person is a person who looks like everybody else. For the most part, you would not recognize them. Okay? It's something that you do as a personal practice by yourself. That is the way, in order, that's the way you make it stick. That's the way that it becomes your own personal thing. Now, I'm not saying don't go to a yoga studio. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying don't go to a yoga studio. However, I'm saying don't let the only time you practice yoga is when you're in a yoga studio. Okay? Because yoga is not just a physical exercise. Yoga is not just a physical exercise, it's much more than that. And you're going to miss out if you only restrict your practice to a yoga studio and you don't take your yoga practice home and do the work. Okay, so the first thing is you want to establish a meditation practice. You want to establish a meditation practice. That's going to get you started. People, when they get involved with yoga, they're getting the cart before the horse, so to speak. When you look at the eight limbs of yoga, okay, you've got it's yama niyamasana, pranayama, pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, and samadhi. The first two are the yamas and the niyamas, which are talking about getting yourself together. Okay, getting control of the mind, working on getting control of the mind. So the first thing you want to do is establish a yoga practice. Going back to living a yoga, how do we live a yogic lifestyle? You start that meditation practice. That's the most important thing because you have to have that time to yourself. You have to have that time to be able to reflect without all of the outside noise. Here's my recommendation. You get up early in the morning, okay, anytime between the hours of 3 and 6. Okay, get up anytime between the hours of 3 and 6. So you will get the most benefit from a meditation and a spiritual practice when you are doing it between those hours because those hours are a time where the energy is really uh, the energy is really high, and it's going to get you to connect with your higher self, connect with the Akashic records, right? Connect with whatever you consider to be the ultimate, right? You're going to get a stronger connection when you're practicing between the hours of 3 a.m. and 6 a.m. So you do a meditation, and in this meditation, you create yourself a mantra before you start the meditation. You create yourself a mantra. You that the mantra is going to get you to a place where you can sit yourself down and hold yourself to meditate. So the back to the yogic, what does a yogi look like? That's one of the first things that is the main ingredient in a yogi's lifestyle or how a yogi lives and works. It's doing that work first. Okay. Now, anger. I want to talk about anger for a moment and expressing anger and being angry. That is an emotion that sometimes folks want to ignore. They don't want to be angry. They don't want to get upset. So they project, okay, and they start yelling at someone. We have to understand that no one that you make the decision to be angry. Okay, you make the conscious choice to get angry about something, and then, well, moreover, you make the conscious choice to act on your anger. It's okay to feel the anger, and but you work with it in your chamber in here. You work with the anger in here because it's your issue. It has nothing to do with the person that's in front of you. Someone can say whatever they want to you, do whatever they want to you, but you are the one who is going to decide how you react, how you respond. So someone does something to you that's completely unfair. You know it's unfair. Everybody knows it's unfair. It's a terrible thing. You internalize it, and you figure out what the best way what's the best way for you to cope with that situation, right? But you don't react. So there's a difference between responding and reacting. No, you don't have to be a Hindi to do yogi, to do yoga. You don't have to be a Hindi to do yogi, to do yoga. Um, Respond or react. Which one of those things are you going to do? And 9 times out of 10, when we get angry, we react. And that reaction is most of the times running up against a brick wall. You know what I mean? Because you're angry and you project that anger, and the person you're dealing with is probably also angry, and so they're coming back at you with it. There's a really great story of this monk who was, or actually, it was a young guy, right? And he was practicing aikido or jujitsu or one of those things, and he was getting really good at it. And this is um, in ancient Japan, right? So he had gotten really good at this practice that he was doing, and he was on a train, and so he got on the train, and on the train there was a brute, right? There was a guy that was just yelling and screaming and pushing people around, and it was getting to the point where this brute was, it looked like he was about to hurt somebody, right? Because he was really being erratic and crazy. And so the who young guy who was practicing jujitsu was like, okay, you know what? Here's my opportunity to use my jujitsu on somebody, because I have to, because this guy is in the subway. He's disrupting everybody. Everybody is scared. So now I need to I need to fight fire with fire. I need to get up and I need to subdue him, and I'm going to win the day. I'm going to save everybody on the train from this brute, this guy that's brutalizing everybody. And so, right as he's about to get up, there's an old man that's sitting down, and the old man says something to the brute. He starts asking him questions, and the brute looks at him and starts to get angry. But the old man is nice and calm, and he continues to ask him questions. Right. In the end, after all the questions and the calmness of the old man finds out that he just realized that this man's wife just died. And he went on and he just started drinking uncontrollably, and he was emotional. And his emotions and his sadness was coming out with anger. It was showing in anger. And so the old man was able to calm him down. And by the end of the train ride, the big brute that was yelling and screaming and trying to beat everybody up on the train had his head in the lap of the old man, and he was weeping. So the jujitsu young man was ready to fight, but he learned a valuable lesson that day. It's like sometimes it's that's not the way to go. We have to really try to uh, help people first, right? And that's what the old man did. The old man was like, okay, there's a problem. There's something wrong with this guy, and I'm going to help him. And so the old man was probably angry. And who knows what that old man knows? That old man probably knew some jujitsu and whatever himself. But he, instead of reacting, he responded to the pain that he saw coming from that brute, right? He saw that guy was in pain. He saw he was suffering. And so that's what he responded to. So that's it for the live. I'm going to end it on that note, talking about what it takes to be a yogi. And one of the main things is controlling your emotions, controlling your anger, right? And then I talked about meditation. So do that. Get up in the morning, work on your meditation practice, right? Work on controlling those emotions, work on stopping the thinking, right? I talked about that in one of my previous videos. You have to stop the thinking. Yogis don't think. A yogi doesn't think. A yogi allows the thoughts to come and then acts on those thoughts. And that's what we want to really work with. Overthinking will drive you running around chasing your tail. So that's it for this live today. Any other questions, comments, or concerns, you know what to do. Thank you all for watching. Peace.